Afternoon, everybody. It's widely known that one of the reasons we use reference monitors in the studio is so that we can have an accurate reproduction of the sound. Not too much bass, not too much added treble. So we can get the mix perfect, so that then when it's played on car stereos or MP3 players, or even giant PA systems in stadiums, it's got the best chance of being heard how it was meant to be heard. And that was always the reason that people weren't able to mix down using headphones, because you just couldn't get the quality of headphone that would allow you to hear the full spectrum of the mix. But all that changed, and we're going to talk to one of the UK's leading authorities on mixing audio with headphones, and that's our very own Professor Tom Francis. He's not really a professor, I just call him that because he knows a lot of things. And one of the things he knows a lot about is mixing with headphones. So, Tom, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Steve.
I think it's probably fair to say that you have put more headphones through their paces than many people I know, and I think you also have an extensive knowledge of the headphones that we're proud to be distributors for, which are Audeze. Do you want to talk us through a little bit about the whole thing about mixing with headphones and why it was never really possible in the olden days?
Yeah, there were two things that you've got with headphones. Firstly, you've got to deal with the frequency response and something being even. And then you've got translation. You've got to have translation. So whatever you do with headphones is going to be replicated when you play back the mix on speakers. Now, not only has headphone technology, certainly in the past sort of 8 or 9 years, really come on leaps and bounds, but we've also got plugins and processing that realistically sort out the problems of that translation. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today.
And let's get this straight. This is mixing. This isn't to do with tracking. This isn't to do with general work in the studio. This is the actual act of sitting down to put your mix together. Yes,
exactly. So on that basis, we're not looking at tracking headphones. And in fact, on the whole, we're not going to be looking at closed back headphones. We're going to be focusing mostly on open back headphones. And that's because open back headphones, through the pure nature of them, will always have a more even frequency response, because you haven't got the reflection off the back of the cup and then back into your ear. And that provides a dip or a peak in the frequency response that you're always going to have to contend with. And that's one of the big challenges for headphone designers. So with this into mind, what we really need to look at is getting a pair of headphones that's going to be more accurate than the speakers in your room. Now, if you're in a fairly small room, and especially room that hasn't got any treatment, so you haven't got any panels like the ones that are behind me or the bass traps in the corner, you're going to have a fairly uneven frequency response. And in a room without anything, especially if it's small, this could be a change of sort of plus or minus 10 or 15 dB at some points in your frequency response.
And you presumably don't even know what those, where about that's going to take place if you haven't got the correct measurements.
If you've not run a measurement mic in your room, you're not going to know where those peaks and dips are. Even if you put the most perfect monitors in, it doesn't actually matter, because you're going to get the room having that effect on your speakers. So for a lot of people, especially in smaller rooms, things always become a lot more difficult when it's smaller. The real thing here is that you can now go and get headphones that are a lot better and a lot more even than your room. And you notice I'm saying even a lot here. I'm not saying flat. because flat response is something for mastering suites. Nearly no studio is an actual flat response, because actually when you've got it, it's not very inspiring. You know, most studios have a tilt, so you'll have the bass region up and dipping down gently towards the treble, but it's going to be an even line. And that's exactly what we want to get and replicate in headphones. So what I'm going to start off with today is some of the plugins that actually help us solve the issues with headphone mixing. And there's a handful of them now. Some of them will look at just tonally readjusting, and some of them will look at the spatial elements and the stereo imaging, and how much that's then going to replicate speakers. And the more that it replicates the pair of speakers and the feel and the crossfeed, because remember, if you've got two monitors in your room, you're not just hearing the left monitor in the left ear and the right monitor in the right ear. You're going to be getting a feed, a cross feed from the other monitor into the opposing ear. And that's predominantly one of the main characteristics that we want to replicate. So I don't know if Luke's there. Luke, can you call up the Canopener shop, please? So Canopener is a plugin by Goodhertz, and this is fantastic. It's one of the only ones that doesn't affect transient detail whatsoever. It's got no room emulation in it, but simply you can dial in the crossfeed really accurately. It will literally, any grade of headphones, from the most basic to the top end headphones, Audeze LCD-4, will benefit from this. And that is all this does, is just give you that gentle crossfeed.
So let's get this straight. So this could even improve a pair of the most basic bog standard 50 quid headphones, yeah?
Oh yes, yes. You are going to get that. It will always give you that. So the main thing that limits people mixing on headphones is this lack of crossfeed. And how this does it, it's frequency dependent. So it'll basically mono the bottom end, because that's actually what happens in your room. All of your sort of sub frequencies and low bass will get monoed, and then it expands out above that. So it's really excellent at doing that, and it will work on any set of headphones or in-ears or anything whatsoever. It's particularly good. There's also different levels of realism, which replicate the actual effect of speakers more in the studio. There's hyper-realistic, there's normal mode, and hyper-realistic is generally a good one, but there's a little dip in the higher frequency, higher mids, that you will get off speakers in a room. It's just how it naturally occurs, but you can turn that on and off. But if you are doing any headphone mixing, go and get this.
And where's it from, Tom? Where do you get it from?
You get it direct off Goodhertz.
Right.
But it's the perfect pairing for absolutely any headphone that I'll be talking about today.
And what sort of money is it?
Oh, that's a good question. It's not expensive. I think it's $60 ish.
All right, so it's not hundreds of pounds.
Oh no. Sub
cool.
Sub $100. I can't remember. I think I picked it up on a Black Friday sale, and that was a good Black Friday.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. So that's Canopener. That will literally just do crossfeed.
Right.
It doesn't do anything frequency-wise. It doesn't put any compensation in, but that's literally, and it works on everything. It works on everything with the least effect on the tone of the headphone. So the dynamics all pass through it perfectly, which is the only plugin I'm going to talk about today which does have zero effect on the dynamics, really.
Cool. All right, so we got the crossover taken care of.
Yeah.
What's next?
So that now we want to look at something that's going to rebalance the headphone. So intrinsically, no headphone is truly flat. But if we look, if you can pull up the graph, so the Headphones LCD-2 graph that I gave you, here's a frequency response chart, and there's two headphones on there, and in fact two very good headphones. So the blue line is the headphone, and the reddish line is the Audeze LCD-2. So you can see there that the headphone is a lot more linear generally, and the Audeze has got a little bit of a tilt, but actually they're fairly even, and there's no correction, there's no processing going on them. That's their natural tonal balance. But these are two particularly good examples. So basically what these plugins will then do is take that and rebalance it. The most famous one of them is called Sonarworks. So Luke, have you got the screenshot? So there we go. We've got the Sonarworks there, and in fact it's got their LCD-2 model loaded up in that. Now, what you will notice is that actually, if I'd loaded the same thing up in every plugin, none of them agree with each other. You get a slightly different result in each program, and that's because they're all measuring on different heads and measuring two different specifications and what we call a target curve. So don't worry too much about getting flat. What you want to do is just to make sure that you're getting a lovely even sound, and it's that word again. That's really what we want to focus on. So Sonarworks is one option if your headphones are supported by it. Each one of these has to have a model of your headphones. They won't just magically work because they know they have to be programmed with the settings for it.
But presumably they've got models for all the best known headphones, the standard studio stuff you'd expect. Yeah,
they've got for many of them. I won't say all, but each one's got a different selection. And thankfully, all the ones I'm going to talk about today have got a demo that you can try out and see if it suits you and compare how each one works with each other and find the one that actually sounds right to your ears when you play some reference material with it. And that's really the way to try any of these correction plugins. Play some stuff you know is mixed incredibly, that you know well, play that through on each setting and find the one where it makes it sound right to your ears, because there is going to be a bit of variability to it. The next one we're going to look at is Morphit by Tone Boosters. And this is the cheapest. This is a few, I think almost half the price of the others. In fact, under it. It's a few dollars, $30, $40. I can't quite keep up with what pricing is. But again, lots and lots of models on this one. In fact, I think it's got more than Sonarworks. It's got a very extensive library. So supporting more headphones. Generally quite good, but again, try each one of these out with your headphones and see which one works for you.
It looks a lot simpler interface, that user interface.
Yeah, to be fair, Sonarworks has a whole room correction side to it as well.
Ah, right, okay.
However, one thing that Sonarworks and the next one that I'm going to talk about both have is a thing called system-wide. So if you are going to be putting correction onto your headphones, it can, and they're on a separate output. So your headphone output is a separate, channel assigned in your DAW. Then you can just tell it to put the correction on the headphone output and not on the speaker output. which I've got to say the new Sonarworks is brilliant for that. So it's each one of these things has got advantages and disadvantages.
Let me just also just jump back and say that these plugins are being strapped across the master outs, yeah? On your door, yeah.
So you're going to want to put these plugins either as the last plugins on your master bus, or if you've got a monitor bus, then this is exactly what a monitor bus is for. So we've got all these different options. The last one I'm going to show today is called Realphones. And this is a fairly new plugin, but it's excellent. It's really good. It's got a selection of models to it. So you have got headphone profiles for a lot of the major headphones. But it goes one step further because we really get into room modeling. And that's the final sort of piece of the pie in trying to get your translation as good as possible. It will do crossfeed in here, but it does take a hit on the transient. So if you've got a really high-end set of headphones, you want to be using Canopener to do that. If you've got a lower grade one, then Realphones is going to be really good for you because you're not really going to notice the difference between Canopener and this if you haven't got one of the like planar type headphones or Focal Clear Pros or something.
Okay, cool. And how much is this one?
Sub £100 again. They quite often have sales and stuff, and there's I think you can buy a basic version and then choose to add on headphone profiles rather than buying the whole thing, which is a great idea. But actually, Luke, if you can just pop that back on, it's got here you can see a picture of a large studio room in there, and that is a recording studio in Moscow, and they've gone in there and they've analyzed it, and you literally swap between the near fields, the mid fields, and the full range monitors, and you can control the ambience levels, and you can control tone. And actually how much of the room you want to add in. That I found was a killer feature on this, because quite often I was trying to 100% just seemed a little bit too much, but taking that down got me a really, really good result with this. The models, try which one for your headphones. It may not be that you may want the other features of this, but the modeling out of Morphit, let's say, and that's fine to combine. Just make sure you're not double modeling. So turn that section off in here. Rather, make sure you're not doing it twice.
Yeah, and it must be pointed out as well, again, these aren't effects. It's not like a plugin where you're putting effects on. This is getting you ready so that you can actually get on with the mix, yeah?
Yes, yeah. In fact, my top tip for Realphones is turn the HTRF mode off, because that just seemed to be a little bit confusing with all of the things that were going on. But this is all about replicating ideal mix conditions for speakers, because it is just about translation. You need your mix to work out of your space and on as many systems as possible. And if trust me, I deal all the time with mastering engineers, and one of the key ones, who's a guy called Klaus Hill over in Australia. He constantly is feeding people the info. It's like, yes, you've sent me this mix down. Now go and get some decent headphones and go and get some Canopener and go and crack on. And then the next mix will come back and it's just absolute streets ahead on it, because they're trying to mix in an imperfect space. And I think especially if the last year has taught us anything, is that more and more of us are having to do that to get by and to work in things.
It's really interesting, isn't it, the whole concept, because it could get to the point where you're better off investing in a cracking pair of headphones and this software than trying to get better quality monitors in a room that's so messed up it's never going to allow him to do a great job in there.
Yeah, I mean, even in here with the amount of treatment I've got, I've got a lot of bass trapping, I've got the points covered, but just due to the size of the room that I'm currently working in, I've still got a dip in the frequency response, which was at about 100 hertz. So I use a software called Dirac to try and balance it out. But it's not an easy thing to do. And certainly without the extensive bass trapping in here, I wouldn't be coming close to getting the same level of evenness and balance that I would do off a decent set of headphones.
Okay, well, you've walked us through your software of choice for dealing with crossover and for getting this evenness. What's next?
Yeah. Okay, so I think now there is one more set of headphones that I haven't discussed, but we're going to come back to those. And it's like a combined software hardware system. But let's start looking at some good ideas for headphones that are going to get you a long way on the road to getting better really great mixes, especially if you can combine them with some of the plugins that I've just shown. So let's start off. Sennheiser HD-600. Now, this is a fairly old headphone from Sennheiser, but they reconfigured it in 2019, I think, and slightly revoiced it, slightly rejigged it. But it's great. It hasn't got tons of sub to it, but the mid-range is really even, and all of the correction plugins have got a preset for HD600. It's a very, very popular headphone. It's not the be-all and end-all of what you want, and here it's definitely the lowest sort of definition and dynamics and everything, but it's a good even headphone. This with the plugins will get you good results.
Cool. And as you say, it's a well-known headphone, and studios have used them for a long time. So there might be quite a few people listening that own a set of those.
Totally.
So if you were to take those headphones and apply the software that you've spoken about, you're confident that someone could get a mix out that would stand up well in a mastering suite, for example.
Yeah, we're getting to that good balance level. You haven't got such level of detail with these. Some of the ones I'll talk about next are going to increase that detail level, but you're going to get a good balance. They're very light, they're very comfy, and they've got a good wide stereo image that admittedly gets brought back in when you put the plug-in on. And that's one thing. A lot of people talk, especially in the hi-fi world, talk about this thing called soundstage. And soundstage is like stereo width. It's like phantom stereo width when you put the headphones on. And actually, when you start using crossfeed, it's almost completely unimportant, because we want it to have the same stereo width as a set of monitor speakers. And that's really what you've got to focus on. Don't get too het up by people going, actually, I think you'll find that the soundstage on these is lacking. It's like, yes, but we're going to reduce it again, because you're listening to some crazy music and you're not trying to mix on the things.
Yeah, that's the difference, isn't it? You're listening to a set of performance headphones rather than mixing headphones, and that's this definition that we've got to get.
Well, this is it. It's the same headphone, but there's qualities. Some qualities are really good, and some qualities we just need. It doesn't really matter. And a lot of the time, the people who are listening for hi-fi use and the people who are producing need two different sets of qualities.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, what else?
So let's pop those back. Next up is Audeze LCD-1. Now these are £400 and about $400, and they are planar magnetic. And it's the first headphone here that we're going to look at, which is a planar. Now, planars differ from conventional headphones. So conventional dynamic headphones have a speaker-like driver in them. It looks like a speaker cone, whereas planars have a wafer-thin substrate that's etched with a magnetic pattern, and then that's magnetized, sometimes from one side, sometimes from both sides, and that moves uniformly backwards and forwards. And that uniform movement means that it has almost zero distortion, because distortion is caused when part of the driver moves more than another part. So if you think with a speaker cone, the outside of the cone will travel further than the inner. Well, it's pushing from the inner, and the outer part needs to catch up. It's not always sort of behind it. With a planar driver, you should move everything at once. The other advantage of this is you get great transient response, and that's the sharp sounds, the attack sounds, the tap of a hi-hat, all of those real detail, and that's where we get detail. So it's how fast the driver's moving and replicating that waveform, and that's where planars really come into their own. So LCD-1 is a super lightweight model compared to the others. It's also got smaller cups, and it has got a smaller sound stage than the other units. But again, don't let that put you off, because by the time that you've got Canopener running with them, they're pretty unstoppable. And you will get, you're also going to need a slight EQ. Audeze have got their own free program called Reveal that you can use for that, just to rebalance everything perfectly. But these are an amazing choice. If you want more detail that you get from speakers, certainly speakers under a few £1,000s, then this is the type of headphone that you want to be looking at. And, £400 retail, it's a bargain for what you actually get.
Yeah, that goes back to what I said before. So people, if you know you're not in an ideal studio situation, it may be better to invest your money on a cracking set of headphones and the various software that you're talking about, than to try to up your game on the monitors and still be hindered by the fact that your room is never going to allow it to sound right.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, there's always a call for having a set of monitors in a room just to play back, just to have listen back. And obviously, if you've got more than one person in there, then that's there. But for final mixes, I would absolutely encourage people to run through with headphones, if not do the entire final mix on headphones with plugins.
Perfect. Okay, what's next?
So next up from that, we've got the Audeze LCD-2. So Luke, I think you've got an image there. And Audeze's LCD-2 is the first of all the models now will look fairly similar. LCD-2 has got a lovely tonal balance. And when I went on earlier and showed you the graph for it, the bottom end is lovely and just raised, and it's there, but you've still got lots of detail. The transients are really good, and it's a very enjoyable headphone to work with. It's not flat so much, but it's even, and most of the correction plugins have got a preset for it, but don't put too much on. It's not too far away from where you want to be heading. It's just a very enjoyable headphone, and I think they're about £980 or something.
And again, some people might think that's an extraordinary amount of money to pay for headphones. We know it's not. We know there's many more expensive ones. But when you compare that to the cost of reference monitors for studios, it pales into insignificance.
Well, this is it. £500 a speaker for reference monitors. It is definitely mid-range.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're into models like the HEDD Type 07, the Audeze A7X. You're into that kind of range of spend. And as much as I love especially the HEDD Type 07s, you're going to get a lot further and a lot more accurate unless you've already spent thousands of pounds on acoustic treatment. You're going to get a lot closer putting that money into headphones.
Cool. Okay, next up.
Okay, next up is the Focal Clear Pro.
Focal have been around a long time, haven't they?
They absolutely have it. So then they make some truly awesome headphones. This is absolutely no exception. It sounds very similar to the LCD-2 tonally. However, it's a little bit lighter, and it's very comfortable to wear for long periods. It is more expensive. This normally clocks in around just under £1,300 or so. But it's a great model for it, to go and mix down with. Again, most of the software has got a profile for it. It's a wide, expansive sound, and the only downside with the Audeze LCD range, excluding the ones, is that they have got a little bit more weight. They are sort of upwards of 500 grams. Whereas the Focal, if you are a little bit more sensitive to that, may be a better option for you.
And it has to be something that's to be borne in mind, isn't it? That you're spending a long time with these headphones stuck on your head, mixing, in anger, and little things like that might not seem a big detail, but actually after 6 hours constant, your neck bent over like that. That little bit of weight difference can make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. And, so much of what I'm going to talk about is about sonically how it is, but these have got to suit you. These have got to suit your actual working practice. That's one of the main things that's so important, is that if you don't get on with it, you won't get good results because you don't want to wear them. So the comfort factor is definitely a big point, that when you're choosing something, just because the headphone's right for someone else, it might not be the best choice for you. Absolutely. What's next? Okay, so I think we go now to the classic, or rather not the classic, but the one that you may well have seen. This is Audeze's LCD-X. This has probably been the main choice for mastering engineers, mix engineers for the past 6-7 years now, I think it is, since its introduction. Everyone from Adele to Ed Sheeran to Imagine Dragons have had mixes put out on this, 9 Inch Nails, and various TV shows. I've heard stories of a lot of people mixing projects in lockdown solely on a set of X's. So these are a fantastic choice. Now, they're slightly more linear than the LCD-2. So if you prefer the slightly bumped bottom end, then that's the one to go for. But these are much more like a mastering suite. The frequency response is more on the level. And again, most of the correction plugins have got a profile for them. And Audeze's own Reveal plugin has one as well. Though my top tip is, if you are going to use Reveal, use the MX4 preset and not the LCD-X one, as I find that's actually, with the more modern driver, that's the little tweak to go for.
Well, so you can actually chop and change in that, and you don't have to use the specific. You can't. The
LCD-X and the MX4 are intrinsically linked. because actually they use the same diaphragm. It's just the MX4 has twice the magnetic strength, so the dynamics are a lot faster and crisper. But arguably, it goes beyond the level of the best speaker, and that's getting to a point where mastering engineers are really going to love it, but it stops sounding like speakers. And that really is our challenge. It's like, this is probably the most speaker-like level that you're going to get.
Right, and what sort of money are those?
So these are $11.49 in the UK. I can't remember what the dollar rate is.
So again, that's some people might think that's a lot of money to pay for headphones, but that's absolutely nothing to pay in terms of the quality of reference monitor you'd have to buy to equal that sort of detail. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd say you're in with these the 2s, the X's, the focals. You're going 10 to 15 to 20,000 pounds worth of monitors. It's that kind of grade that you go up to, and good ones at that. Not
sure. No, absolutely. But it really is something that I don't know whether many project studio owners or home studio owners will have really ever considered, because for such a long time the idea of having to afford the best reference monitors you could get was always sacrosanct. And yet what you're saying here, and it makes all the sense in the world, is that headphone technologies come on to such a degree that an investment of 1,200 quid and a little bit more for some software can actually bring you results that you might have to go and buy a 35 grand pair of barefoots for or something. It's that's stunning.
I mean, headphone technology now has surpassed in detail level, surpassed the level of even the best speaker. It can't compete. And in fact, that brings me nicely onto the next one that I want to talk about, which is the headphones.
Okay, now I know you've been quite excited about these. They turned up a few months ago, and you were getting a bit giddy.
Well, it's over a year ago now. I mean, I've heard every version of this from the very early beta stage, and this again raises the bar for headphones in the studio. The level of detail and the speed and the dynamics on it are just something else. But it does raise a question that it goes above the level of speakers. So you're hearing stuff that isn't going to get replicated and heard by anyone who hasn't got a set of headphones, headphones.
Wow. So let's just put that into context then. So what you're saying is they're so detailed that the only thing you can listen to hear what the differences you've made are another pair of headphones.
No, it's just you can hear detail in those headphones that will not appear in other places. Now, used in conjunction, they're a brilliant partner for Canopener. Canopener with them, I wouldn't use anything else but Canopener. It is just amazing at bringing the stereo image in and giving you that translation with the headphones.
So what's the bad news in terms of dollar?
$14.79 in the UK.
So again, it's still not prohibitive if you're serious about getting this stuff done.
Not at all. The only downside up until now, all the headphones I've talked about are fairly easy to drive. The headphones, you will need a good headphone amp. If you've got a rack mount Apollo X series, they can just get away with it, or merging Anubis, but they take a lot of power to be able to drive those properly.
So we enter the wonderful world of DACs now, yeah?
Yes, DACs and headphone amps. However, I did discover a brilliant one for them that isn't £1 million. and that's the iFi ZenCan. Now, this is a tiny little unit from iFi, and it's just amazing with the headphones. So ZenCan has a balanced output, which you can see there. It's on a new little 4.4 millimeter jack. And what that does is it basically doubles the signal. So what it's sending positive and negative to each side at the same time. So it's pushing and pulling. Now, that extra power creates swing. And the swing means that you get just dynamics and sort of impact, and it's just unlocking another level of detail on something that was a ridiculous level of detail to start with. But it's £149, and then you will need a balanced cable. But the good news is we've just taken delivery of some. So you can, as of next week, get a balanced cable off us with some headphones or some Audezes, as luckily it will fit either.
Wonderful. And are we going to be doing some bundles, do you think?
We absolutely will be, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so is that the top of the tree?
That is, when we're talking, so quality-wise, I'm going to go on record and say that the HEDD headphones are crazy. They're bonkers. Now, there's some other great headphones above around there. Obviously, Audeze's own MX4, LCD-4. They're fantastic headphones. However, we're starting to go up into substantially bigger jumps. So MX4's £2,800. The LCD-4 and the LCD-4Z, which is the lightweight model, they're up, I think, $3,799. So it's a real jump to go up to that level. There's also some cracking ones. Mezzi's Imperium is another one that's a wonderful headphone, as are the Rossen Audio Design Rad Zeros.
Because Alexander was he was instrumental in the starting of the Audezes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, totally. He was one of the original founders of Audeze.
I remember meeting him in a car park in Los Angeles and bringing back one of the first pairs of Audezes into this country.
I've got them here.
Is that the very pair?
That is the very pair. This is the very pair of LCD-3s that you brought back.
It looked like the craziest drug deal ever, me meeting him in the car park of a motel off Sepulveda. But cool. All right, so we should say then that that if anybody is looking to get into this and wants some more detail, you're available through Scan to talk. And do we have a landing page up on all this yet, or are we going to be publishing one soon?
Yeah, I'm trying to. We've got a headphones landing page that'll talk you through some of the stuff with the DACs. But I've kind of saved some stuff now from last, because this isn't the end of the story.
Okay.
What we've talked about so far is purely sort of analog systems, and I've got two more things that I want to cover, which are Audeze's new Penrose headphone. And this is
it looks like a gaming headphone.
Well, it is. He's actually designed this one for PlayStation 5, and it's wireless. So it runs a USB dongle for its communication, and it's rechargeable. It runs about 10-11 hours off a charge. And all of the stuff that they've put in to make this so good for gaming is actually rather unbelievable for the studio, because it's got low latency operation, and that's way down into the low milliseconds that you can get this running at. And it's also lossless connection. So what you're hearing is basically a FLAC encoded signal between the computer and the headphones. So The quality's really good. It's still a planar magnetic driver, like all of the other Audeze headphones. The detail level's good, and it's got EQ built in. It's got DSP built into the unit. So we've released a video on our YouTube channel all about this for the studio, which includes my little EQ tweaks to give you the most even frequency response with it.
And these aren't strange money, are they?
No, these are £300, $299. And it's got an analog input. So the best thing is, and it's so tolerant. In fact, it's more tolerant of sort of easy, sort of lower grade stuff than the higher grade headphone outputs. This directly out of a laptop, a modern PC motherboard, an iMac, MacBook, is amazing. But it means you can run it out of the normal headphone output on your interface, which means you can make it part of your workflow. So it's not that you have to run it on the wireless mode, because obviously that's running one thing at a time, but you can just use it like a regular set of headphones. You've just got to remember to, keep it charged. But this is a fantastic way of getting into it, giving yourself reliable mixing. And I just team this up with one of the crossfeed plugins. But actually, the tonal, the phantom width, the soundstage on this is very like speakers. So it naturally feels like speakers when you put it on for the balancing.
This is an offshoot of them developing headphones specifically for a gaming environment.
Yeah, well, it came predominantly from the PlayStation 5. And PlayStation 5's new audio engine, which is called Tempest, is basically like Atmos. So it's object-based surround sound. So Audeze had a previous headphone called Mobius, and that had 7.1 surround sound built into the headphone itself with tracking, and you could follow you around. But realistically, it was, yes, there are people who want to do that, but it's all done inside the PS5. So all you need is a really good 2-channel stereo headphone to get the full effect. And we're just feeling the benefit of that because all of the development work's been done for the PlayStation, and actually it's all the same qualities as you'd want in the studio.
Cool. Well, you said there were 2 things you were going to finish with.
Yes.
What's the second?
So the next one is Stephen Slate. Stephen Slate has released a headphone called a VSX, and VSX, albeit on the surface, it's not a very expensive feeling headphone. It's certainly not on the same level of build quality as anything else I've spoke. But the frequency response wise, it's fairly good. Now it's a closed back, so you can use it in a lot of places. But the bass response off it is good. However, the detail level is fairly low. But why that doesn't matter is because it comes with its own plugin software. And the VSX plugin software isn't trying to replicate crossfeed. It's not trying to change the frequency response of it. What they've actually done is measure real life rooms and spaces and giving you the emulation of that space. Now, if you imagine, like I said, with a lot of these headphones, we've gone above the level of speakers. And the level of detail that's in the VSX headphones is actually plenty. It's a good level of detail for the emulation. So you're not kind of losing stuff when you're using it with it. Now, normally I disregard this, but I've got to say, because actually Realphones can do the room emulation in that lovely, lovely Moscow studio that they've analyzed. But what Slate do is they've given you so different spaces. And this is just an absolute masterstroke. The plug-in here is amazing. Because a lot of what you do is comparative. It's you're looking at one system or you're looking at another, or you're taking a mix that you've done and going and playing it in the car.
Yeah, absolutely.
The old car test.
Yeah.
And this is where it looks. So, Luke, have you got the video there? Here we go. Now, you might notice the little music here, as it's what me and you actually do. So here's the first studio in VSX, and there's 3 sets of monitors. So there's the mid ones that I'm talking to now, and then a set of NS10s. Let's go into Archon. Now this is the best one for me, and this is the best setting. Midfield Archon is really good and clear, and the far field one has just got lots of weight to it. Into a mastering suite, and you can choose whether you sit as the engineer or as the client on the sofa at the back of the room. First of the car systems, and this is obviously a Tesla, and then an SUV. Again, different spaces, different tones. The audiophile room is a very linear, balanced space. Again, gives you a second opinion. And then onto club. Now, this is so insightful, and I'll shut up for a minute. Now, the whole thing here is, immediately when I played this track through, that I could hear that for the first time, I've not got enough LFO on the sub. That really was insightful to me, as is this, a boombox setting. So realistically modelled boombox, and then there's a selection of some of the most popular studio headphones. So that's the 650 from Sennheiser, DT770 from Bayer, the M50, Audio Technica, of course, and the Apple AirPods and AirPods. And there we go. That's VSX and how it works.
What sort of money is that then, Tom?
Well, when it came out over here, it was 480 quid. I can pleasantly say that it's now 400, so 399. And actually at 399, if you've not got another set of studio headphones, it's really good. And even using the plug-in with another set of headphones, I've had really good results. It's insightful in a way that other headphones on their own aren't. Would I use it solely on its own for mixing? I probably wouldn't. I'd go and pull one of the planars and I'd do my balancing. But then I'd go and turn this on, especially on the club setting and on the car settings. You've never got to go and do another car test again. This is so good.
And didn't Focusrite try this a while back, many years ago? Didn't they have a little box that they tried to do the similar sort of thing?
So this was that was the VRM box from KRK.
I remember. Yeah.
And
so this is like a modern version of that.
The difference here is they're analyzing time as well as frequency. All of the previous ones have changed the frequency, and perhaps they've put a bit of reverb on to give you that room effect, whereas this is actual impulse response modeled in these actual spaces. I mean, hats off to it. I would have loved to have seen a better set of headphones with it, just because it would be useful in so many spaces. But just software-wise, no one's really nailed that. And the fact that I could pick up something on the club system and in the car, and the radio one, just the radio for checking that, can you hear the bass on the boombox.
But you see, to me, that's almost worth paying the 400 quid so that you've got all those references.
It's so much better. It is so much better than the previous ones that just looked at frequency. It's head and shoulders above it. For the actual studio modeling, I've got to say, I kind of the real phones one is just on par. Is on par, but there's only one studio. So if you want that, Realphones is a great way of getting into that world. But I'd almost, for not having to do another car test again, I would, and the club test. How can we do a club test for the last 12 months? There's no clubs.
But it's for any genre of music and for any style, just to be able to have those different reference points, just to literally be able to put it in a boombox, then inside a car, then in a stadium or in a club. That's almost worth the money in itself. Forget the idea of mixing. I mean,
I'm there. The headphones themselves, I could throw them away and not really worry about it. But in the same way, they will get you a result and get you working and get you mixing. And if you upgrade to something like a set of planars later on down the line, it doesn't just stop working. I have actually I've backwards engineered the EQ on it, so the changes that it's making specifically for its headphones, I've managed to do an opposite EQ curve that will cancel it out. And we'll be putting details of that up and everything else. But I'm going to rebalance it and reanalyze the plugin itself for use with other headphones. But it shouldn't put you off getting it, because I'm totally £400. I would just pay that for the insight that I got, because it's true. I'm saying this in a way that I'm not normally shocked by things, or I am shocked by things. If something makes such a difference and it's really good,
I'm shocked by the fact that you're so impressed with it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? No one had really hit the impulse response time-based processing before. But it's right. It sounds, when I go, because I'm getting on a bit. I'm over 40. You go on and wander about a club and wonder why it all sounds a bit muddy and why some tunes translate better than others. Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't got to go and wander about with a lot of the kids anymore. I can go and tell you that just at home. It's perfect for me.
All right. Well, look, that's been a pretty insightful look into this whole idea of not only mixing with headphones, but as you say, being able to do different references once you've finished. Is there any final word you'd have to say on this subject, Tom?
Only if you do go down the headphone rabbit hole, just be aware the headphone output on your interface, unless it is a very new Universal Audio Apollo X or an Antelope. Antelope's great quality, but not lots of power. Could be the limiting factor. So have a look at headphone amps, or have a look at upgrading to an interface that's got a better headphone amp with it. And if you need to know what that is, come and ask us.
Yeah, and if they want to do that, what's the best email address to drop a line to?
So that's scanproaudio@scan.co.uk, and one of us will get back to you.
Okay, well, for the time being, Professor Tom Francis, that was wonderful. And as he said, if anyone has any further questions, just drop us a line and check out the site. We have got different bundles, we've got different things happening all the time. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys again on some similar subjects soon. Cheers, Tom. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Kenny Rogers.